UFC 277 is almost here. I'm going to give you my final picks. We're going to talk about some prop opportunities and we're going to build some lineups. So make sure you watch until the end. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. We're coming off a good week. UFC London was a success. UFC 277 shall be a triumph. And I feel good today. The hair is down today. I'm not like one of these guys that's gonna, I don't know, wear the same hat every time they record a video. We gotta keep it fresh for you because I got respect for you. And if you haven't had a chance yet, go back and watch the video from earlier in the week. I'm gonna have that linked right in the top of the description. That's our predictions video where we go over the entire card. But this is the final pick, so we're gonna start right with the value plays. These are plays at 8,000 and below that you need to consider. Right at the top of the list is Derrick Lewis. He's fighting Sergei Pavlovich this week. There's a lot to like about Pavlovich, the youth, the size, the length, the one-shot knockout power, but obviously there's value on the Derrick Lewis side as well. Lewis has the most knockouts in UFC, knockout king tattooed on his chest, deceptively fast hands as well. And like we talked about in the video earlier in the week, linked in the description, this fight probably doesn't go beyond the first round. I think that the crowd is going to get Pavlovich and Lewis excited enough to get after it right away, take some risks, and look for a knockout early. So you're absolutely going to need one side of this matchup in your lineups, and the first round knockout upside of Derrick Lewis automatically builds value into his price. So we have to talk about him here during value plays, but I will be fully transparent with you. I still think that Sergei Pavlovich gets it done. I think Pavlovich is going to land with relative ease, and he's going to stay out of range. And again, Derrick Lewis does have fast hands, but he's not the sharpest striker we've ever seen. So the pick remains Pavlovich, but if you're running multiple lineups, you want to get some Black Beast exposure for sure. He's still really good value. Of course, if he gets a first round knockout down here at 8,000, he shows up on the optimal lineup. He's worth your consideration, good value. Now our next value play is actually a spot that I've changed my mind on throughout the week. We've got Alex Perez, who's got a really tough task on his hands this week. Alexandre Pantoja is 100% an elite flyweight. This is going to be a difficult fight for Alex Perez. But the value on this side of the matchup cannot be ignored, especially from a fantasy perspective. Alex Perez always scores well in the fights that he wins. Alex Perez actually averages over 105 Draftkings points in fights that he wins. We talked about this with Molly McCann last week. People who historically put up good scores on Draftkings deserve consideration when you're building your lineups. And I don't care if the fighter is a flyweight, I don't care if it's women's MMA, I don't care if they have a tough matchup. You have to look at these fighters who have proven to be Draftkings gold in the past.
That's gold, Jerry.
And stylistically, I do think that this is a solid matchup for both guys, really. I think that Pantoja has a really clear path to victory, but I also think that Alex Perez has a clear path to victory as well. Perez is a grinder. He shoots a lot of takedowns, he has good jiu-jitsu, and he was caught in a guillotine by the champion. He was knocked out by Joseph Benavidez, but he's only 30 years old still, so he's just in his fighting prime. Pantoja doesn't have the best takedown defense in the world, and upon a closer look, I think that Alex Perez has a real shot of not only winning this fight, but looking damn good when he's doing it. Earlier in the week, I said Pantoja by submission, but I've changed my mind here. I think we see Alex Perez win a decision this week, mixing in a lot of grappling, scoring over 90 Draftkings points, and being one of the very few underdogs that comes through this week. Really, really good value down here at 7,500. Our next value play is way down in the salary. We have to go all the way down to 7,000 so we can grab Juliana Pena this week. I fully expect her to successfully defend her title in this fight. The only way that I see her losing this week is if she gets caught with a submission in the first or second round. But after the second round, I expect Amanda Nunes to have no gas left in the tank. We saw Pena drag Amanda Nunes into what I would consider shallow water. I don't think it was deep water because it was only in the second round, but Nunes still gassed out because Pena was landing, making her fight off the back foot, and continuing to apply pressure when they hit the clinch. I think if Pena just sat there in the clinch and was more patient with Nunes, it would have given Nunes the time that she needed to recover and maybe get back into the fight. But she didn't do that. She wasted no time getting her to the ground, and that takedown was the straw that broke the camel's back. Amanda Nunes was ready to go home and rip some Fortnite.
I'm playing Fortnite, dude. I got my pizza rolls already. I got a new girlfriend. Shit is amazing right now.
And it really doesn't matter how many points she scores. Yes, she has 5 rounds to work, so the ceiling is there, but if she doesn't have a great performance in terms of fantasy points, it really doesn't matter because there aren't many underdogs on this card that I see winning. I expect maybe 3 underdogs to win this week, so excellent value here on the champ. I think Pena inside the distance makes a ton of sense, and still. And we have one more value play this week, and before you get all,
"Oh, brother, this guy stinks!"
just allow me to explain. This is a card where favorites likely dominate. Again, I think only 3 underdogs win this week. Michael Morales would have to score over 130 DraftKings points this week to be viable, and that's not something that we see very often, especially in a 3-round fight. And if you didn't catch the video earlier in the week, I can kind of explain that rationale to you now. Magomed, 9,500 last week, secured about 12 takedowns, almost 120 DraftKings points, wasn't on the optimal lineup. And that's because a lot of the favorites did very well. I think we see something similar to that this week. So if you do fade the Morales side, if Michael Morales is a fade, which I think that he is, then it would make sense, wouldn't it, to go with the underdog. And there's so much value here that even if he loses, it's a decision and he scores around 40 points, you might be in a decent spot, not a tournament winning spot, but if you're in your cash games or you want to just cash in your tournaments, you're probably in a good spot if Adam Fugitt gets 40 plus. But I don't think we'll see him score around 40 points because he's either getting finished inside the first round or he's going to find a finish late himself and score well over 40. I just think that Michael Morales has a tougher fight on his hands than what most people expect, and if he comes into this thinking that the short notice replacement's going to be an easy out, he's going to get complacent. And just imagine for a second if Adam Fugitt goes out there, secures a takedown, and Morales is on his back in the first round. Morales is a young guy, he's fought largely very low level competition, he might just panic. And that panic may lead to a mistake, and that mistake may lead to a submission, and then everybody's freaking out because the massive underdog came through. And don't you think for 1 second that that is impossible. Need I remind you about the fight that we were just talking about between Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes? Nunes was a minus 1,200 favorite, Pena was plus 700 as an underdog, and look what happened. This is MMA, this is MMA DFS, this is gambling, a game of risks, and I will be taking a risk this week not only by playing Adam Fugitt, but by picking Adam Fugitt as well. Excellent value down here at 6,700, makes literally anything else in the lineup possible. We're going to use him when we build some lineups. And now we'll do exactly that, build some lineups. But before we do, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We're trying to hit 10 million subscribers by fight time. Make it happen, people. Come on. We're not that far away, right? And if you don't mind, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works. But now let's get into some lineups. First, we can look at what a cash game lineup should probably be this week. Now, there are 2 ways of looking at this that I'm going to demonstrate for you this week. You can either go the Michael Morales route or you can punt Adam Fugitt. Let's say you did want to punt Adam Fugitt this week and you wanted to save a lot of salary right from the beginning. Now you've got 86.60 left over. Well, I also recommend stacking the co-main event this week with Kai Kara-France, and then you can come right back up here to Brandon Moreno. Now you have over 9,000 per fighter left on the table. Well, this is where things become really simple for us, because what we can do is just plug in Drew Dober, we can plug in Orion Cosce, we can plug in Drakkar Klose. There you go. Now, this makes a ton of sense to me. You're fading the main event. I know that in cash games, ownership doesn't matter as much as it does in tournaments, but ownership does matter a little bit. So by not playing Pena, not playing Nunes, not stacking that up, you're going to have a unique enough lineup, and you're looking at a situation where you have winner, 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 at least a winner from this fight, and then you're punting Adam Fugitt. Now, if you don't want to go this route, let's say you wanted to take these guys out and you wanted to go with Michael Morales this week, well, then I would still recommend that you come here to Brandon Moreno, you come down here and grab somebody like KKF. You've got 8,100 left over. Another fighter that I changed my mind on throughout the week is Ji-Young Kim. I think that Ji-Young Kim can get it done this week. Earlier in the week, I was talking about Joselyne Edwards piecing her up from distance, but when you think about it, she's not Ramona Pascal. She's not just going to stand in one place. She doesn't have any power, like any, in her hands at all, but Joselyne Edwards does not respond well to getting hit. She's also training with Weili Zhang, so she may be able to implement some wrestling here. We know Joselyne Edwards can't defend a takedown, so Ji-Young Kim is a good way for you to save some salary, get one of the underdogs on a card that really doesn't have many that you probably feel great about. So if you are in this situation, I wouldn't recommend playing somebody like Sergei Pavlovich, not for cash games. It's too volatile, and look what your choices are. Instead, I'd probably come off of Pavlovich, grab somebody like Alex Perez. Now you've got 8,900 left over. You can come right up here to Orion Cosce, or you can grab somebody like Dontel Mays. I think that makes a ton of sense. That's basically what I would recommend if you're going to play some cash games. If you have a different idea, if you're building something else and you want my opinion, follow me at Kunith MMA. Send me a message. I'll respond to it. I'll tell you what I think about your lineup. Just let me know what kind of contest you're in, whether it's cash, whether it's GPP, how many people are in the field, and then I'll be able to give you my advice. My Twitter will also be linked in the description, so you can find it right under the video. And as for your tournaments, if you are playing in a tournament and you want another one to play in, what I've done recently is I'm running a $1 winner-take-all tournament up to 150 entries each week. We may bump that up, not only with the entries, but the entry fee later on, but right now, $1 winner-take-all. I've been in the top 3 for 2 weeks in a row. Come on. You guys keep edging me out, but this is a fun contest because you can turn $1 into $40, $50, $60, $70 depending on how many people play. If you're interested in playing in this $1 winner-take-all contest, you get all the chips and it's amongst community members. What you can do is add me on Draftkings. I'm going to put in a pinned comment below what my Draftkings username is. You can either reply with your username or you can add me directly on Draftkings, and I'll make sure I get an invitation or 2 out to you for this week's contest. Now, if you're going to be playing tournaments this week, I'll blow up this cash game, and I'll tell you first what I expect a lot of people to do in most of your contests. Well, you're going to see somebody grab one side of the main event because people just tend to do that anyway. So let's say they go with Amanda Nunes, who I expect to pull more ownership than Juliana Pena this week. I could see a lot of people coming to Sergei Pavlovich this week. I think Negumereanu is going to be a popular underdog. I think Kai France is going to grab a decent amount of ownership. Now you can start coming up here. I think people are really going to want to play Michael Morales this week. And now they're going to have to come all the way back down here, grab somebody who they think has a chance. They're not looking at Derrick Lewis if they already have Pavlovich in the lineup. Ji-Young Kim is going to come in at very low ownership, as she should. Hamdy Abdelwahab is not going to pull a lot of ownership. I don't think too many people are going to want to get here. I think you'll see people come to somebody like Alex Perez if this is what they're left with. That high price tag might hold down the ownership of Michael Morales. If they wanted to come off of him, I could see people going to somebody like Dober if that's the case. You've left 1,000 salary on the table. No one's going to leave it like this, nor should they. You probably come off of Alex Perez and then come up here to someone like Dontel Mays. I think this makes a lot of sense, but the way that I would approach the lineups this week is a little bit different. Now, the way I probably approach most of my contests this week is, let's say we come down here. I think Pena is the best play on the slate. And then I'm going to come up here to one half of the fight that I think we absolutely need. I lean more on the Pavlovich side. I think Potieria is a great play this week. I think he's going to get a knockout, and I think Negumereanu comes in at pretty high ownership. I'm thinking around 35 to 40% in most of the contests that you'll be in this week. We can grab somebody like Dontel Mays. We can come up here to somebody like Orion Cosce, and we can still afford Dober. We've left 100 salary on the table. This looks perfect. You're not playing Nunes. You're not playing Morales. You're not touching the co-main event. This is a little bit different enough. Don't copy it in whatever contest I'm in. Now, if you do, I understand. It's okay. It's a good lineup. Now, if we didn't want to go this route, let's say we blew this up and then we wanted to do something a little bit different. Now, personally, I'm not really all that high on Magomed Ankalaev, Amanda Nunes, or Drakkar Klose this week. But if you did want to pay up for somebody like Michael Morales and you wanted to come all the way down here to Juliana Pena to balance it out, I think that makes sense. Because you could still attack that mid-range that I think is going to be the bread and butter this week. I think you'll really need to get this mid-range correct. So you grab Pavlovich, you come up here to Potieria, you can grab Dontel Mays, and now you've got 8,400 left over. This is probably where you come down to somebody like Alex Perez. You leave 900 salary on the table. Not a bad play in my opinion. And the reason why I say it's not a bad play is because you have Alex Perez, which is one of the better underdogs this week. Dontel Mays should beat up Abdelwahab this week. Potieria is going to be underowned. Pavlovich first round knockout. Juliana Pena, plenty of upside there with 5 rounds to work. And then Michael Morales with the best matchup on the card. Now this is barring if Juliana Pena wins, because if Pena doesn't win, then things are a lot different. If Pena doesn't win, there aren't a whole lot of underdogs in this range that I really like. Which means we would have to come off of Morales so we can make some other things work, because now we have 8,700 left over per fighter, and this is where you can grab somebody like Semelsberger, you can grab somebody like Cosce. Now, even if you attacked your tournaments like this, you're very different. You have no main event, you have no co-main event, you're in a great spot. On top of that, you don't have Michael Morales, so despite you spending all the salary with a lineup like this, it still should be different enough. Now, I want to be inclusive, so let me show you what I think would make sense if you wanted to go with Amanda Nunes this week. If you wanted to take Nunes, you could. You can also come to somebody like Dober. You can go right back to this mid-range with Dontel Mays, Potieria, you got Pavlovich. But now you have 6,700 left over. Gee, where am I going to find a fighter at 6,700? Adam Fugitt right there. You probably hate it. You probably hate the Adam Fugitt pick, but it helps make something like this work. This also puts you in a position where your lineup of 6 fighters only has 1 underdog. Now, personally, I don't like the Amanda Nunes pick, but what if we wanted to do something just a little bit different and we wanted to grab somebody like Orion Cosce? I'll tell you right now, nobody is going to be playing anything like this. So when you're in your big contests, you're in those $1 contests where you could make like 150 lineups if you wanted to, play around with combinations like this where you aren't looking at the main event, main event, Michael Morales. I'm not saying that's a lock to be on the optimal lineup, but I'm saying it's a good way to get different. And if you want to know how we get different, well, that brings me to our next segment, which is over, under, owned. We're going to look at 3 fighters that are over owned, 3 fighters that are under owned, and I'm going to tell you what I think. So our first fighter that's over owned this week is Brandon Moreno. I think that a ton of people are going to get here. I think they're going to look for a lot of points, but historically, he doesn't score that many. Look at all these fights. He's only crossed 100 points 3 times. Really not something that you want to hang your hat on, and I expect 40, 50, maybe 60% of the field to get here. Brandon Moreno, over-owned. Another fighter I think is going to go over-owned this week is Alexandre Pantoja. I think that a lot of people are going to get to Pantoja because of his price and where everybody else is priced. I think that they're going to expect him to find the submission the same way I thought earlier in the week. But if he doesn't win, he's going to ruin a lot of people's night because they're going to be overexposed to him. I could see him coming in at around 35 to 40% ownership in a lot of contests, and I'm really not looking to get behind him this week. I think there are some holes in his game that Alex Perez is going to be able to exploit. He is our second fighter who will be over-owned this week. And then the last fighter that's going to go over-owned this week is right here at 7,800, Negumereanu. I don't rate this guy very highly at all. Safarov, Kamer, and Ike Villanueva is some of the softest matchmaking that he could have at this weight class. And then he draws Kennedy and Nzechukwu and he wins a fight that he clearly lost. And if I remember correctly, there was a point deduction on the Nzechukwu side. He should have lost that fight. Dude is extremely hittable. I think he gets knocked out this week, but I think a lot of people are going to go with him just because of public perception, UFC experience, the other guy's record being a bit sus. But I'm telling you now, people are going to want to save salary by grabbing Negumereanu, and he's going to burn a lot of people. He goes over-owned. Now, for the fighters that are going to go under-owned, right here at 8,800, I think Orion Cosce is not going to be in everybody's lineup this week. When you look at the way that he gassed against Phil Rowe, it's not really promising, and I don't think that a lot of people want to play against Blood Diamond, even though he didn't look good last time out. I think that Orion Cosce pulls less than 20% ownership in most of your contests. I think a lot more people are going to look at the Ankalaev, Morales, Nunes, Klose route. Even Brandon Moreno, who's right next to him in salary, I think that Orion Cosce goes a bit under the radar this week. Another guy that goes under the radar this week is the other side of the Negumereanu fight in Ihor Potieria. I think that Negumereanu is going to pull a ton of ownership, so by default, you should expect Ihor to come in at lower ownership, and I think that he finds a knockout this week. Negumereanu eats way too many shots. He's going to let Ihor land cleanly, and I think Potieria picks up the knockout in this fight. So I expect Potieria to be under-owned. And then our last fighter that goes under-owned this week is right here with Alex Moreno. Like we talked about in the video earlier in the week, I think that Matt Semelsberger has the tools to knock him out with one big punch, but the experience and the more refined striking is definitely on the side of Alex Moreno. Something that we really can't ignore, and I think that if Alex Moreno fights the proper game plan, he'll find himself on the correct side of a decision, and again, really doesn't matter how many points the underdogs score this week because the favorites are going to be all over this card. Alex Moreno, not everybody's dying to click that button. I assure you he is going to be under-owned. And we're going to wrap up with some prop opportunities that I think make a lot of sense this week. I like the knockout prop in the Orion Cosce Blood Diamond fight at -120. I could see Cosce just winning via ground and pound TKO, or Blood Diamond's able to catch him with a high kick if this fight gets extended and he's able to work his kickboxing. So the KO prop at -120 I think makes a ton of sense here. Joselyne Edwards versus Ji-Young Kim, fight goes the distance at -330, automatic. Same logic applies here with Adam Fugitt and Michael Morales, except it's the other way. -330 for fight doesn't go the distance, lock. Drakkar Klose by decision at +100 I really like. Alex Perez by decision at +330 I think is super sneaky. And then over 2.5 rounds in the main event I think is an absolute smash spot at -115. And just to quickly go through the card for you, I have Pena inside the distance, I have Brandon Brandon Moreno by decision, Sergei Pavlovich by knockout, Alex Perez by decision, Ankalaev by decision, Matt Semelsberger by knockout, Drew Dober by knockout, Dontel Mays by knockout, Drakkar Klose by decision, Adam Fugitt inside the distance. Let's go. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And again, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, send me your stuff on Twitter, join the contest on DraftKings. I'll see you there.